My sister stole my fiancé a month before the wedding, and my parents took her side. I paid a visit to their wedding. What was supposed to be the happiest day of my life turned into one that I'll never forget. I went from being the bride-to-be to the uninvited wedding guest who crashed the event because she wanted revenge. But karma arrived at the venue before I could. He made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. When I met Ethan 2 years ago, I was sure I had found my forever. He was everything I had ever hoped for. Charming, witty, and thoughtful. He knew exactly what to say to make me feel seen and special. It was like he had stepped right out of a dream. Every moment we spent together felt magical, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is what love is supposed to feel like. 7 months ago, when he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, I thought my heart might burst with joy. I said yes through tears, believing I was the happiest woman alive. I had no idea that I would never become his wife. I had no idea that my fairy tale would fall apart. One of the things I loved most about Ethan was how involved he was in planning our wedding. He wasn't one of those guys who just nodded and let me make all the decisions. He wanted to be part of everything. We sat side by side, flipping through venue catalogs and sample flower arrangements. Together, we chose an elegant banquet hall with a beautiful garden space for the ceremony. We imagined ourselves standing there under a canopy of cascading white roses, surrounded by our closest friends and family. We laughed through cake tastings, trying dozens of flavors before agreeing on a soft vanilla sponge with fresh berries and cream. We picked our first dance song together, swaying to it in the kitchen more than once as we practiced the moves we'd later do in front of everyone we loved. Every detail, from the invitations to the color of the napkins, was something we had done side by side. It felt perfect. It felt like a dream, but dreams can shatter, and mine did. Just 1 month before the wedding. It happened on a Wednesday. Just an ordinary, quiet Wednesday. I had left work early because I wanted to surprise Ethan. It wasn't a big thing, just something sweet. I picked up his favorite takeout from the burger place he loved. Fries, extra. Pickles, and the chocolate shake he always said made his day better. I was smiling the whole way to his apartment, imagining the grin on his face when he saw me at the door holding a greasy paper bag full of his favorites. I still had a key to his place, so I let myself in quietly. That should have been my first clue. How quiet everything was. No music, no sound from the TV. Just stillness. Then I saw it. A woman's coat was draped over the back of the kitchen chair. It wasn't mine. I stopped for a second, confused. My first thought was innocent. Maybe a coworker had dropped by, maybe a cousin, someone I hadn't met yet. But then I heard it. Soft laughter coming from the bedroom. That sound hit me like ice water. Something about it felt wrong. I walked down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. My heart started racing. My hands began to shake. I paused outside the bedroom door, listening. Then, before I could think twice, I turned the knob and pushed it open. What I saw made the world stop. There, tangled in the white sheets, was Ethan. And beside him, there she was, my older sister, Lauren. My body locked up. My mind couldn't understand what my eyes were seeing. My sister, my own flesh and blood, in bed with the man I was supposed to marry in 30 days. Lauren gasped, clutching the sheets to cover herself, her face going pale with shock and shame. But Ethan? He didn't even look surprised. He didn't flinch. He sat up slowly, rubbing a hand through his hair, looking more annoyed than guilty. "Wait," I said, my voice barely coming out. "What the hell is this?" He sighed, like I had just interrupted something minor. "You weren't supposed to find out like this." I blinked, staring at him. "Find out what?" I demanded. My voice was louder now, sharper, breaking with confusion and pain. Lauren wouldn't meet my eyes. She just stared down at her hands, still wrapped in the sheets. Her silence made it worse. She didn't try to explain. She didn't even apologize. "That you're a cheating liar? That my own sister betrayed me?" The words tore out of me like fire. My whole body was shaking. I couldn't stop the fury, the heartbreak, the disbelief from crashing into each other all at once. My hands trembled at my sides as I stared at them, both of them, half covered by a blanket, like this was just any normal morning. Lauren's face was pale. She still clutched the bedsheet to her chest as if that could protect her from what she'd done. She didn't look at me, not once. She just stared at the wall, eyes wide and filled with guilt. But guilt wasn't enough. Ethan, on the other hand, dared to look right at me. His expression was calm, too calm. Then he said it. "I love her." Just like that. 3 words. Simple. Cruel. They hit me like a punch in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, like something was pressing down hard. I had come in here thinking maybe, just maybe, he would say it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that it meant nothing. But instead, he looked relieved, like a man who had just put down a heavy burden, like this was the moment he'd been waiting for. I stared at him, at the man I thought I knew, the man I was supposed to marry in a month, the man who had held my hand during cake tastings, danced with me in the kitchen to our wedding song, picked out flower arrangements like he actually cared. It was like he had disappeared. In his place was a stranger. "You love her?" Voice cracked. "Then why the hell did you propose to me?" He sighed, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. "I thought I loved you," he said, "but things changed. Lauren and I, we've been seeing each other for a while. For a while." The words echoed in my head, heavy and sickening. This wasn't just a single night, a terrible mistake. This was something planned, ongoing. They had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face for who knows how long. I turned to Lauren, my voice barely holding together. How could you do this to me? She finally looked up just for a second. Her eyes were full of shame, but it didn't matter anymore. I didn't mean for it to happen, sis, she whispered. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my throat. Didn't mean for it to happen? You didn't trip and fall into his bed, Lauren. She flinched, but I didn't care. I was done protecting everyone else's feelings. Ethan stood up, still not bothering to cover himself. He moved toward her, putting an arm around her like he was her protector now. The sight made my stomach churn. Look, he said, his voice too calm, too even. I get that you're hurt, but we didn't want to keep lying to you. My hands clenched into fists. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Oh, you didn't want to keep lying? That's rich. You two have been lying for months. I turned on my heel and stormed out of the apartment. My heart pounded in my ears, my legs shaky, my chest full of pain and rage and disbelief. I slammed the door behind me, but it didn't feel like enough. Nothing felt like enough. My world had shattered in an instant, and I couldn't even catch my breath. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. A few days later, my phone rang. It was my mom. We need to talk, she said. By then, I had barely eaten or slept. I'd been crying so much I didn't even recognize my own face in the mirror. My friends and bridesmaids had come by to support me, bringing ice cream and tissues, staying overnight just to make sure I wasn't alone. But I hadn't heard from my parents until now. I thought foolishly that maybe they were just trying to give me space, that maybe, just maybe, they would be angry on my behalf, that they would take my side. Instead, I walked straight into an ambush. I sat on the edge of the couch in their living room, waiting. My mother entered first, looking composed as ever. My dad followed, serious and silent. My mom sat across from me and folded her hands in her lap. We understand you're upset, she said slowly, like she was speaking to a child. My stomach dropped. But Ethan and Lauren are in love, my dad added. I blinked. Excuse me? You wouldn't want to stand in the way of true love, would you? My mom said gently, her voice soft and calm, as if that made this any better. I stared at them in disbelief. My throat tightened. Was I hearing this right? True love? Are you serious? I couldn't believe the words coming out of my mother's mouth. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say she was joking, but she didn't. Instead, she sighed like I was being unreasonable, like I was making this harder than it needed to be. Sweetheart, she said gently, you've always been strong. You're independent. You'll move on. But Lauren, she needs stability, and Ethan makes her happy. Her voice was soft and calm, as if she was trying to make this betrayal sound like a logical decision, like a favor. I stared at her, stunned, feeling like I was drowning in disbelief. So what? I asked, my voice cracking. You're just replacing me with her? Acting like none of this ever happened? Like Ethan was never mine? We're not taking sides, my dad said, but his tone was cold and firm, made it crystal clear. They had already chosen. Then came the final blow. They're still having the wedding, Mom said. I blinked. My ears rang. Excuse me? And, well, she hesitated. Lauren will be the bride. My breath caught in my chest. I stared at her, blinking fast, waiting for someone to stop this, to say something that made sense. You can't be serious. It's already paid for, she said. Like that settled it. The venue, the flowers, everything. It would be a shame to let it all go to waste. I shot up so fast the chair screeched against the floor, making everyone flinch. Unbelievable, I muttered. Dad stood too, his voice calm but stern. We'd like you to be happy for them. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. You want me to celebrate this? My heart pounded in my chest. Lauren had taken my fiancé, and now my parents were taking her side, just like they always had. Growing up, Lauren was the golden child. She always got the praise, the attention, the benefit of the doubt. And me, I was the one expected to understand, to be strong, to keep quiet. And now, they expected me to smile and watch them cheer her. On as she married my fiancé, I didn't say another word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked out of that house and didn't look back. When the wedding day came, I obviously wasn't invited. There was no phone call, no apology, just silence. It was like I had never been part of any of it. Like I'd just been erased. But I wasn't going to let them erase me. I wasn't going there to scream or throw cake. I wasn't going to fight or ruin dresses. I just wanted to wait quietly until the officiant asked if anyone objected. Then I'd stand, look every guest in the eye, and say it loud and clear. The groom used to be my fiancé, and the bride is my sister. I wanted everyone to know what they had done. I wanted to ruin their perfect little lie. But when I arrived at the banquet hall, everything was wrong. There was no music, no chatter, no laughter or clinking of glasses. The hallway outside the ballroom was lined with people, stunned, frozen in place. Some had their hands covering their mouths. Others whispered behind palms, eyes wide with shock. Something had happened. Inside, the decorations were just as I remembered planning them. The white roses, the soft golden lights, the elegant place settings, but none of it matched the mood. There was tension in the air, thick and cold. like a storm had just passed through. Then I saw them. Uniformed officers moved through the room, speaking quietly to guests, gathering statements. My heart skipped a beat. My eyes scanned the crowd, trying to understand what I was seeing. "What's going on?" I asked one of the officers near the entrance. Before he could answer, movement to the left caught my eye. Lauren. She stood near the front of the room, still in her wedding dress. Mascara streaked her cheeks. Her shoulders shook with every sob. Her veil hung half off, caught on a strand of hair that had fallen out of place. She looked broken and shattered. My parents sat stiffly at a nearby table, both pale and silent. My mother stared at the floor. My father looked off into the distance, as if he hadn't fully processed what was happening. But Ethan was nowhere to be seen. I stood there, frozen, in the middle of the decorated ceremony hall. Everything looked perfect. White roses lined the aisle, chairs were neatly arranged, and soft music played in the background. Guests murmured among themselves, confused and restless. The whispers were growing louder with every passing second. Then a police officer stepped forward. His uniform was crisp and his face was serious. He looked around before turning to me. "Are you a guest?" he asked. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer that question. My hands were trembling. I wasn't sure what I was anymore. I was supposed to be the bride, but now I felt like just another face in the crowd. Finally, I nodded slowly. "Sort of," I said quietly. "I was supposed to be the bride today." The officer sighed, a deep sound that seemed full of exhaustion and sympathy. "We came here to arrest the groom, but he wasn't here. He was caught at the city bus station trying to leave town." I blinked, stunned. "What?" My voice was louder than I expected, and a few guests turned to look. The officer gestured toward a group of detectives who were now speaking to some of the guests. "Turns out," he continued, "he's been running a long con. He's a scam artist. He never planned on marrying anyone." My heart pounded in my chest, my stomach twisted. I felt dizzy, like the floor might vanish under me at any moment. I had been preparing for this day for months. All the dress fittings, cake tastings, flower choices, it had all been for nothing. But more than that, I had believed in Ethan. I had trusted him. "What did he do?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. The officer's expression darkened. His jaw tightened. "He's done this before to 3 other women in the city. He took off with all the wedding gifts, the deposits, the decorations, and whatever money he could get his hands on. He's currently on the run." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan had lied about everything. He had told me his family was flying in from Europe. He talked about cousins in France, an aunt in Germany, and even grandparents in Italy. But now the truth was out. He even lied about having family coming from Europe, the policeman added. He has no family, no guests, nothing. Shock rippled through me like a wave. My parents stood nearby, still frozen in disbelief. My mother's hands were clutched tightly around her purse, and my father's face was pale and stiff. They had put so much effort into this day for me, and now it had all fallen apart. Across the room, I saw Lauren, the woman, my sister who had betrayed me. She was now the one abandoned at the altar. Her makeup was running down her cheeks as she sobbed, her last-minute bridesmaids trying to comfort her. She had stolen Ethan from me, thinking he was her happy ending. Now she knew the truth too, and somehow, for the first time in weeks, I smiled, just a little. The chaos around me was wild, but it wasn't mine to carry anymore. Justice had been served. Guests began to leave, murmuring to each other, shaking their heads in disbelief. Some looked sad, others just annoyed that their day had been disrupted. I stood quietly, watching it all unfold like a movie I wasn't really part of. Then, one of the officers approached me. He was younger than the others, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He had been standing near the entrance earlier, and I remembered catching his glance when I arrived. "Hi," he said gently. "I saw you come in earlier. I heard Officer James say you dodged a bullet." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It felt like I had been holding it in for weeks. "Yeah," I said, with a small nod. "I guess I did." He gave me a small smile. "Would you like to grab a coffee sometime? You know, with someone who isn't a criminal?" I looked at him, surprised. I hadn't expected that. I glanced at the name tag on his uniform, Officer Matt, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something that wasn't anger or sadness. It was light, hopeful. Maybe a fresh start wasn't such a bad idea after all. That was a year ago. And tomorrow? I'm marrying him. Life has a funny way of working out.